Hello and welcome to another video from oorail. This video is Loco Works Wednesday, and this is part 5 of our Class 66 project. Now this video was supposed to come out last Wednesday. Unfortunately we had a bit of a problem with our LEDs, and in fact it's just the top marker LED, and what was happening was after a couple of minutes of running it would basically explode. It would make a kind of a glass shattering noise and stop working. And I don't know if you can see this on camera, but it's got a pretty impressive looking hole in the plastic as well. So I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. It wasn't an electrical issue because nothing was touching. All the wires were insulated. I even went and re-insulated the wires with electrical tape just in case there was a breakdown in the coating that's on these wires. I went and ran it in a separate circuit, and it ran fine for hours and hours and hours. So I couldn't quite figure out why it was breaking. The only thing I can think of is the only way I could get it to stay in the Loco was to super glue the top of it. So now I'm wondering if maybe the super glue was causing heat buildup or something like that inside the LED, causing it to shatter. I really can't think of anything else because it basically worked just fine. So what I've done instead in this video, you'll see, I used one of these LED sequins from Adafruit. They're a little different, but more or less the same kind of idea. They're just basically mounted on a board. You put the wire through here and solder it on either side, and so you have two wires that come out. Because this is a little bigger, I didn't really have to glue it. I was able to secure it in place with some electrical tape, and I'll 3D print some kind of mount for it as well. So in this video you're going to go see some stuff that I did about it just over a week ago in terms of putting the Loco together and getting all the wiring inside of it. So I hope you guys enjoy that, and towards the end of this video you'll see some more shots of the Loco running around with the lights on, and I'll also show you what I did with the Adafruit stuff. Up. We basically put together the circuits, and you would have seen probably the thumbnail at least of these blue breadboards sitting inside the Class 66. Now I did that, obviously these are too big, but I did that for testing purposes. Breadboards are really handy for just testing circuits. So what I did was I put together the circuit piece by piece, kind of built up on it, and tested it off the track with some crocodile clips connected to a old safety minor H&M controller, and you can just use any kind of DC controller. And so what I'm doing this week is I'm basically going to put the circuits inside the train. So you can see here I've actually removed the circuits from these two breadboards, and they had like the white light, the kind of tail markers, or sorry, the side markers, and the headlight, as well as the top marker. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm also going to show you how to do that by dismantling this circuit and getting it so that it fits inside the train. Here is a quick look at what we did. I initially tested this with these kind of jumper cables. They're just kind of simple. I use them for Arduino. You can use them for kind of prototyping, and they kind of click in and so on. Now I had them inside the pins here on the DCC socket, and the problem, I couldn't keep using these because they just don't have the height clearance. So like when you try to put the body shell on, this black piece here that's rigid is just in the way and won't close the chassis. So those had to be replaced with some just DIY jumper cables, and they're really simple to make. I just used a 22 gauge wire, just standard, it's a couple millimeter wire, and it's solid core. You don't want to use stranded for this. And I used a wire strippers just to strip the wiring off, made life a lot easier. I used a pair of snips to basically cut, I have offsets here, and basically to cut the pins down so that they kind of just fit right inside here. And if you can see there, what I've done is I've used the orange to connect one side of the circuit. Remember, these 3 pins here were all connected together, and then these black ones are the other side of the circuit, and those are all connected together. You can see here I'm using some smaller breadboards. This small breadboard is basically hooked up to the front lights, and then this slightly larger version has the main circuits on it with the resistors and the diode and so on. These are pretty handy. I believe they're kind of stackable and designed for use with some Arduino shields. They're dirt cheap. I got a pack of a whole bunch of them for a couple of dollars on Amazon. I've got a link in the video here, as well as in the description, to our Amazon UK, and our Amazon US store is also in the description. And you can find these under the Class 66 Railhead Treatment Project. I got these smaller ones as well, and they're basically pretty simple. You can see there they've got numbers 1, 2, and 3, and basically they're just wired this way. Now these outside ones are also wired this way. There's no difference. They're not like wired horizontally or anything like that, and it makes for just putting the circuits together a lot easier. Likewise, this one is numbered, I think it's 1 through 9. Yeah, 1 through 9. You can sort of see it there. I got the red one, it might be a little easier to see. You can see there it's numbered 1 through 9, and so basically you get 12 or 11. So you got 1 through 9, and 10 and 11 are all wired that way. Okay, so this is a little tricky to see, but I'll try to walk you through the circuit. So basically it's the exact same circuit that we showed you last week. It's just been condensed down to fit inside the locomotive. So like I said, I've got 2 breadboards. I've got this slightly larger breadboard, and then the small one off to the side. The small one off to the side is handling the return, the negative side of the circuit. So the 2 front LEDs are going into this board, and then this little jumper wire is taken into the diode, and then it's going back into the negative side of the circuit. So these orange wires that are plugged into the DCC socket here, these orange wires are all the positive side. So they go into this first row of the breadboard, and so this first row here has those wires going into it, and I've jumpered the first and the second row together. So the second row has this 1K resistor attached to it. Now it might look like the other resistors are connected there, but they're not. They're actually in the next 2 pins over. So if you're looking at the circuit, we basically have the orange wire coming in. It's jumpered into the second row. The resistor here is in line, and so the one side of the resistor is plugged into the orange wire, and then the other side of the resistor is plugged into this row here. This row has the orange wire going to the top marker on the front, the white one, and then it also has the 2 resistors in parallel for the front lights. This larger resistor is, I believe, a 560 ohm resistor, and it's going to the 1 LED on the side here that's controlling the side marker. And then you've got this 150 ohm resistor that's going to this LED on this side, and it's controlling the side marker on the headlight. The reason, if you didn't watch last week's video, is that we're using 150 ohm resistor because we want this one here to be brighter, so the lower resistance on it being in parallel will make that lighter. You can also see here, if you look real carefully, on the end and the same row that we have the 560 ohm, and on the same row that on the other side of the 150 ohm, we have the positive sides of the LEDs, and these have been run as copper colored wire along into this LED, and then along the base here and routed here into this LED. You can see that we have the LEDs mounted in this 3D printed bracket, and basically the 3D printed bracket has a side piece on the side with the headlight to stop the light bleeding out, and then this side here where this 5 marker is the only one, it's actually cut out, so it's on the edge. And we also had to sort of make this cut in the chassis a little bit bigger. You'll also see that it's angled at a slight angle. It's probably about 1 millimeter gap between this front and the side here, and the reason for that is it actually lets the light shine this way. Now we've temporarily blue tacked this array into the Loco. You could probably get away with leaving it blue tacked. If you want to make it a little more permanent, you can super glue or PVA glue that in. I super glued the LEDs into the 3D printed part using Loctite super glue. It's just a brush on stuff. Basically brushed both the 3D printed part and the LED, the top of the LED, and just held it together for about 60 seconds, and it held in place. And then after about 20 minutes, I kind of brushed over the back of it with some additional glue just to keep it in place. So far that's worked really, really well. The return path for all these circuits goes through this board here. So both the negative sides of the LED go into this row, and then you've got the black, which is a negative wire, coming from the top marker, and then you've got this jumper wire that takes it into the diode, and then you've got the 3 wires that are on the negative side of the circuit, all in the same row going back into the DCC socket. And that basically completes the circuit. So the next piece that I need to do is I need to get this board here, which has the tail lights, into this circuit board. And so I don't have a lot of space, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this red circuit board here and mount it kind of in the middle of the Loco, maybe beside the DCC socket like this. And I'll be able to run wires into this circuit, and since this one only has a resistor and a diode, I should be able to cram it into there. Now in case you're wondering how I'm getting those resistors and stuff into the circuit, because they are a lot longer in terms of when you have the pins and so on, so you can see here that it's pretty lengthy. So what I'm doing is I'm basically just using a pair of snips once I've measured it in place. So what you do is you basically just bend it like so, so that it's kind of got that profile. What I do is I take a pair of decent quality pliers, and I just straighten it out, because, you know, either pulling them off the reel, or you know, if you're messing around with them for your prototype circuits, they can easily get a little bit bent. So I'll usually straighten them like that, and so that works pretty well. And then what you do is, once you figured out how far across the breadboard you want to put them, you just take a pair of snips and cut the thing off. So I'll give you a quick demonstration here. It's pretty straightforward, so kind of want to make sure that it's reasonably, so like about halfway usually works. So you just cut that off and cut that off, and then that will go into the breadboard. And then, as you saw on the Loco, you can see there it kind of just sits on the surface of the breadboard, so it's not taking up as much height. And so what I'll do next is I'll show you guys how to take this circuit and break it down into so it'll fit in the smaller breadboard, and we'll show some mounting options inside the Loco. I haven't had too much problems. I ran the thing like this, just with the white lights on the front, mainly just to see, you know, that make sure there's no problems. I didn't know if there might be some vibration issues with these just sitting in the socket pins, or sorry, the wire sitting in the sockets without any kind of connector. But this worked really, really well. It fit in there perfectly. I haven't had any problems with it, and my layout has some ups and downs, a little bit, some undulations, so as well as some banked track, so it didn't have any problems whatsoever. It's partially ballasted in places, so it kind of bounces up and down a little bit, so the lights didn't flicker at all, and everything was working really well. And I tested it for about an hour and a half, just to make sure that the circuits held up, and it's worked pretty well. So one of the things I did notice was that the Hornby wiring is a little flimsy, and it's kind of just held in place with this foam. It's kind of got some tacky adhesive on the end of it. I think I'm going to try to route this cable a little bit better. There's some pins here that look like they're used for mounting or something like that. So I might produce some kind of 3D printed cable trunking or something like that for in here, so that I can run the wiring and have it a little neater. So we'll do that in an upcoming video. But yeah, so next what I'm going to do is basically shrink down that circuit, and then we'll show it to you running on the layout. Also in this video, you remember a couple weeks ago I cut this hole out so that we can put a 3D printed part in. So I'm going to put the 3D printed part in and show you guys that working as well. And then this look will be almost done. We'll have a few other parts and some painting and some weathering to do, which we'll do next week. But then we'll go to work on the next Loco in the series, so that we can complete the railhead treatment train. Now if you guys are interested in doing the same thing, all of the parts that you see and that you need to complete this project, including the tools, we'll have those available on our Amazon store as a kind of a shopping list. If you're in the UK, there's a link to it right now on the video itself. And then if you're in the US, or you want to click on it later, there's a link in the description as well for you to get to that. We get a small amount of kickback from Amazon, so it helps fund the channel a little bit if you're interested in buying it from us. And I pick out the items that we've actually used, so it's not stuff that we've just randomly selected. We've tried to pick stuff when we do the projects that are available in the UK as well as here in So one thing to be careful of is make sure that you are cutting and placing the diode in the right position. Just remember the positive side is the copper side. And what we're going to do is we're just going to try to, it's a bit fiddly because it's real small. And I'm trying to do it on camera. But basically you want to put that in that row. And then we'll put this one in there. So that should be first LED done. And then straighten out the second one. Now, if you don't want to have to straighten out the LEDs after you use them in the test circuit, you can always use a new one. It should work just as well. And so this is being wired in parallel, so we just stick that in there and then stick it in the other side. And so you can see there we've got the incoming wire. It's going across the resistor. Our two positive sides of our LEDs, our two negative sides of our LEDs into the diode. This denotes that the flow of electricity doesn't go this way, so we're flowing this way, we're fine, and that's the return. And so the next thing to do is just to give it a quick test. So we'll wire that up there, and this one here, and then ta-da, we have a working circuit, and it's condensed. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to position it in the Loco, make sure that it still fits. We could, in theory, put it in here. There's enough space, so we'll figure out exactly how it's going to get routed. Now keep in mind, the wiring though has to go from here all the way to the other side of the Loco, so we're going to use some custom wiring. I'll do that up and measure it up, and then what we'll do is I'll essentially remove these wires that I just put in with the LEDs and solder these onto the end of them, move the LEDs down to the end where the Loco is going to go, and run the wiring in there. And you can see there it works really well. So you can see there the red LEDs are working fine. So what I'm going to do is remove the LEDs from the circuit and basically use some wire to run on the length from where they're going to be installed down this end here, the Loco, through this section here and up to wherever I put the board. The tricky part is going to be making sure that it can negotiate the moving parts of the Loco here. This bogey kind of moves, but I think there should be just some holes here in the you can see that there's some holes for routing cables in there and just some spare ones, so I might be able to use those, or I'll figure out a way to get it in there, although it does look like it moves the whole block. So I think using these holes might be the only way to do it. So we'll give it a couple of tests, and we'll show you the working end result with the option that we went with. But you can see there it's pretty easy to condense that circuit down. You can see we went from being on this large breadboard with everything cut down onto a small breadboard that can now fit inside the locomotive. Okay, so we're back over here at the layout, and what I'm doing is I'm actually just doing a brief test. What I've done, and I'll show you here in a second, is I've basically blue tacked the rear lights into the correct position, mainly just to see how it'll work, make sure that the lights aren't too bright and so on. And it's also helped me figure out how I'm going to route the wiring within the Loco. So what I'm going to do now is just bring the Loco towards us, and you can see there the lights are on and in the right position. I'm going to put it on high resistance so it's not going crazy fast, and if I stop it right there, you can see if I tilt it up, I've basically just used some blue tack. It's the white gray kind of color blue tack to keep those lights in position. Now I did bend them up from the underneath, so they're basically curled up from underneath and setting up almost like frog eyes and or snail eyes sort of thing, and that seems to work pretty well in terms of routing the wiring. So if I run it back this way, and then forwards, we have the lighting that's in place. So what I'm going to do next, for next week, is I'll 3D print a proper mount for these, although the blue tack seems to be working pretty well. Electrical tape along the back of this, it's dropped into the hole correctly, you can see there, sort of, and we've taped it down with some additional electrical tape. I'm going to wrap the two solder joints here and here with electrical tape, just so it doesn't short off anything, and we'll keep it secured as well as the train moves around and so on. So next what we're going to do is just show you this lighting up so you can get an idea of what it looks like. And it wasn't too tricky, although I ended up using the pliers to apply the electrical tape, just because the tweezers really weren't closing down on the electrical tape enough to get it in place. So next we'll show you this lighting up, and there you can see we've got it wired up. It's sticking through the hole. It's a warm white, and it is lighting up in the kind of subdued way that we wanted it to. So it's looking good. Alright, so assuming you didn't skip ahead to this part of the video, you probably just saw the Loco running on the layout. And so what I wanted to show you real quick was the modifications I did from what you just saw in the video to use the Adafruit sequence. So I'm going to pop the case off of this again, and you'll see here what I've done, and we'll just take it out so you can see it. So what I've done is I've basically soldered the two wires to the board there. You can see that the solder's in place. I actually kind of looped it around and soldered it on the back as well. That way it's doing a full connection. So it's soldered to the board, and it's looped around and soldered to this. And you can see there it comes off pretty easily when you move the body shell. So I'm going to have to 3D print some kind of mount or something in there for that, and I'm going to put some longer wires on it so that it doesn't keep so one of the things I'm going to have to do to it is it does pull out the blue tacked breadboards here, so I'm going to make some longer wires on it, but I wanted to get this video out tonight, so I went ahead and just reused the wires that I had for the other LED. So these have been soldered in a loop, so you basically run the wire through the board, and you loop it back around, and then just solder it on both sides, and then solder it to the pad on the board as well. The whole circuit works fine. It's just plugged in here and over here where the LED is, and it hasn't given me any problems at all. I've ran it for a couple hours, and it seems pretty good. So I decided to shoot the rest of this video just so you guys could see how it works on the Loco and so on. Alright, so going forward, next week, you'll see me use this 3D printed part. I might add some more details to it, not sure yet, or if I'm going to reprint it or just glue the extra details onto it. I did try, I ordered a couple of these mesh grill sheets. Now this kind of almost looks like a tea strainer type material. Now this one I think is either 20 or 40. But it's too big. If you look at it on the body shell, it doesn't quite make sense. It's just too big compared to the body shell itself. Now I did get 200 and 400. I guess there's numbers associated with the sheets, but they are a little too fine. What I really want is something in between, so I'm going to order some more sheets and hopefully find the right match for the mesh that goes on this, and then all you have to do is basically just cut it out and glue it here and here, and here it's one piece, and it'll fit pretty well. Seems to work a bit like a T-strainer type material, so it should be pretty easy to shape and mold. Alright, so in the next video as well, I'm going to finish the 3D printed part that I had here for the silencer. Finally get around to painting this, and I'll put back in the cabs, as well as finish up the cleanup of the wiring and so on. One of my goals is to make sure I can get the body shell on and off easily without causing myself all sorts of headaches, and make sure the wiring holds up to a couple of test runs. After that, I will probably do the weathering in a few weeks, along with, while I'm working on that, I also have another class 66 I have to do this to. This is the Hornby DB Schenker. It's the same model. I can show it to you side by side if you want. It's basically the same model from Hornby. You can see it doesn't quite have the modifications that we had done to it. One thing I'm always thinking of doing, as you can see here, this hole here is a lot deeper in the Hornby version than it is in mine, so I may make some modifications to the next one, so that looks okay. I can always pop this out too if I want to replace it, but we'll see if it makes much of a difference. I do see that this is more of a chrome finish, while as this has more of a steel finish to it. This is actually more accurate, but the chrome actually looks kind of a little bit better, so I'm not sure yet if I'm going to keep this color scheme or go to try to duplicate this or do something else. Other than that, you can see it does stick out a lot better than the original version. So there's the original one, and then you can see the detail is a lot more clearer from the panel liner that we did in an earlier video. So you can see here the grill mesh that's here. When ours is done, it'll look more three-dimensional. So this will have the mesh over it rather than just having this kind of painted grill. So you'll be able to see all the detail that's inside here, and we'll paint this up and fill in the gaps that are there. So when it's done, it'll look a little bit better, and we'll do a full comparison at the end. But I'm going to do the same modifications to DB Schenker. Hopefully I'll have perfected it a little bit, and so I'll update the article as well with any kind of additions or changes that I come up with. Alright, so next week we'll have one more video, and then it'll be a few weeks of a break from the Class 66 project while I'm working on this, and while I'm also weathering stuff up and so on. And then we'll show you the weathering video and the final thing running with the railhead treatment train in the final video. So you'll have at least 2 more videos in this series, one next week and then one in a couple of weeks before Christmas. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's been a little bit of a work, but it's paid off pretty well. I kind of like the lights on it. I still have, it's only a prototype, so I still have some cleaning up to do, but you'll see the end result in next week, and then the final thing weathered up in a couple of weeks. If you have any suggestions or comments, please leave it in the comments below. Otherwise, feel free to ask any questions, or share the video, like it, or subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Alright, until next time.